When you picture the Roman Empire, what do you see? Probably legions, maybe emperors, the Colosseum. But think about the sheer scale of it for a second, stretching from the cold coasts of Britain all the way to the deserts of Egypt. Now, building an empire that big is one thing, but how on earth do you actually run it? How do you feed millions of people and keep the whole machine going?
That's the big question, right? It's not just about winning battles. It's about logistics. How did Rome solve this massive puzzle? Well, the answer lies in one of the most incredible, most sophisticated trade networks the world had ever seen, a system that was quite literally the empire's lifeline.
You know, a great way to think about the Roman Empire is as a giant, living body. And if the city of Rome was its beating heart, then its huge network of trade routes were the arteries and veins, pumping essential goods across thousands and thousands of miles. Okay, so this network basically had two main systems that worked together. First, you had the sea lanes. These were the absolute superhighways for anything big and heavy. We're talking entire ships packed with grain, wine, or giant blocks of marble. Then you had the famous Roman roads. These were crucial for moving troops fast and for transporting things that were valuable but didn't weigh a ton, like luxury goods. Each one had a very specific strategic job.
And the difference in cost between the two? It's just staggering. It was something like 60 times cheaper to ship goods by sea than to haul them over land. 60 times. I mean, that one single fact shaped the entire economic strategy of the empire. If you need to feed a city of 1 million people, you're not going to do it with a donkey and cart. You're going to do it with a whole fleet of ships.
And this is perfectly summed up in what the Romans called the Mediterranean Sea. They called it Mare Nostrum, which just means our sea. Think about that. It wasn't just some random body of water to them. It was a Roman lake. It was their highway, a secure and totally controlled shipping lane that connected every part of their world. To control that sea was to control everything.
But let's not downplay the roads, because what they built on land was an absolute marvel of engineering. The Romans constructed about 400,000 kilometers of roads. To put that in perspective, that's enough road to circle the entire planet Earth 10 times over. It's just mind-boggling. This was the true backbone for their military and their communications.
And we're not talking about simple dirt tracks here. About 80,000 kilometers of those roads were high-quality, stone-paved highways built to last for centuries. The most famous of them all, the Via Appia, was even known as the Queen of Roads. So you had this incredible infrastructure binding the whole empire together. But what exactly was flowing through these amazing arteries?
Right, so we've got the network down, we've got the sea lanes and the roads, but what was the actual lifeblood pumping through these veins? The answer is pretty much everything. From the most basic things you need to survive to the wildest luxuries you can imagine, all coming from every corner of the known world.
Just take a look at this. It's like a shopping list for an entire civilization. Each province was a specialist. You've got Egypt, the breadbasket of the empire, sending ship after ship loaded with grain. Then from Spain, or Hispania, you've got olive oil, wine, and tons of silver. Way up north in Britannia, tin, lead, and wool. And from the distant east, caravans were bringing in precious silks and spices for Rome's wealthiest citizens. It was a truly globalized economy, and it was all flowing towards the center.
And all these goods, they really serve two main purposes. On one hand, you had the absolute essentials for survival, the grain to make bread, the iron to make tools and swords. But at the same time, this network fed the insatiable hunger of the Roman elite for luxury, things like silk from China, exotic spices, and ivory from Africa. These goods were a symbol of Rome's incredible power and reach.
Now, a system this huge, this complicated, it doesn't just happen by accident, right? It took a massive, deliberate, and constant effort from the Roman state itself. The government was the guarantor of this whole operation.
And the Roman formula for making this all work was actually pretty simple, but it was incredibly effective. Step 1, build the infrastructure. That means the roads, of course, but also massive ports, docks, warehouses, and even lighthouses to keep the ships safe. Step 2, provide security. This was the job of the legendary Roman Navy, which hunted down pirates relentlessly, making the Mediterranean safer for trade than it would be for another 1,000 years after Rome fell.
And it's so crucial to understand this connection. For the Roman state, all that security wasn't just about protecting some merchant's bottom line. It was about national security. If those grain shipments from Egypt were interrupted, it could mean riots and starvation in the streets of Rome itself. So controlling the seas was a matter of survival, plain and simple.
So when you put it all together, you see this massive logistical web wasn't just some nice-to-have feature of the empire. It was fundamental to the Roman way of life, to its military power,
and to its very existence.
And that's really the key takeaway here. This network wasn't just a part of the empire. In a lot of ways, it was the empire. It was this complex, interconnected circulatory system that allowed a single city on the Tiber River to command the resources of 3 different continents.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty big question. The story of how Rome succeeded is really the story of its supply lines. So what happens when those lifelines get stretched too thin, or worse, what happens when they break? It's a question that echoes all the way from the ancient world right into our own hyper-connected time.